Welcome back to The Deep Dive. We are about to embark on what might be our most ambitious journey yet. Forget traversing a single region. Today, we are exploring the entire documented history of the Pokémon world itself.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We're going from the literal moment of creation all the way up to the adventures happening right now. This is a deep dive into the chronological lore of the Pokémon universe. And the source we're using for this epic task is incredibly comprehensive. A compendium meticulously compiled from the core series games, presenting a scholarly look at the official history within that primary canon. It's perfect for you, our listener, the learner who wants to grasp the grand timeline, the major players, and the pivotal moments without getting bogged down, while still uncovering some surprising facts along the way.
That's right. Our mission today is basically to extract the most important knowledge nuggets from this vast source material. We want to give you a clear step-by-step understanding of how this incredible fictional world unfolded, from the very first moments of existence right up to the dynamic, interconnected present day.
It's about seeing the deep currents of history that run beneath every trainer's journey.
Exactly.
And trust us, there are some mind-bending concepts in this history. We're talking about cosmic creation deities, ancient civilizations with powers tied to legendary beings, world-shaping conflicts that literally branched reality. It's wild stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And how different game versions aren't just alternatives, but canonical windows into a larger, branching universe structure.
And that brings us to a really fundamental principle. This compendium establishes it right at the start. The core series games are the undisputed primary canon for this history.
Okay.
But, and this is crucial, to understand how seemingly different versions of events or regions coexist, you have to embrace the concept of the multiverse and parallel timelines.
The multiverse. Always fun.
It is. The source makes it clear that different game versions, like, say, the original Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire compared to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire or Arrays, they're both canonical within the lore.
Right.
But they exist in distinct parallel universes.
So, when I played Ruby way back when, and then Arrays years later, I wasn't just seeing a remake, I was potentially peeking into a different reality. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly the framework the source presents, and it even points to a specific event as the likely cause for a major split in these timelines.
Oh, which one?
The firing of the ultimate weapon in the Kalos region 3,000 years ago, it's tied directly to the introduction of Mega Evolution in the Generation 6 games.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, this event is presented as being so significant, so reality warping, that it actually branched reality itself. So our source primarily follows this Mega Evolution timeline from Generation 6 onwards because, well, it represents the history shown in the most recent games.
Makes sense.
But importantly, it also acknowledges the existence and the events of the original timeline for context, especially for earlier history or where things clearly diverge. This whole model allows the lore to expand and evolve across different games without just tossing out past stories. They happen in different branches of the same universe,
Fascinating. So not a single straight line, but like a big branching tree of realities, all considered canonical in their own way.
Pretty much, yeah.
And just so we're all clear, the source's Table 1 emphasizes that things like the anime or the manga, great as they are, they operate within their own separate canons, right? Unless something they show is explicitly backed up by the core games.
Correct. So our deep dive today, strictly focusing on the history as told by the main game series based on this compendium.
Okay, got it. Let's unpack this history then, starting at the absolute most fundamental beginning. According to this compendium, drawing from the oldest myths, where does it all start? Before time, before space, before anything?
Okay, so we have to go back to a time of absolute void, just nothingness. And from this void, Sinnoh-legends, which are compiled really well in this source, describe the very beginning of the universe, starting with a single primal egg.
An egg from nothing.
Pretty much. And from this egg, Arceus was born. It's called the Alpha Pokemon, the original one. Pokedex entries cited in the source, from games like Pearl, Y, Alpha Sapphire, they state that Arceus was born before the universe even existed.
Whoa.
And the original story text found in the Canalav library in Sinnoh, it specifically describes this egg tumbling from the vortex of chaos. So this sets up Arceus not just as a creator, but as the ultimate creator deity, the source from which everything else originates.
The absolute beginning.
Yeah, and the compendium actually notes something interesting here. This framework, with one single entity starting everything, and then other powerful beings being created by it, it suggests philosophical undertones. maybe leaning towards henotheism, or even monotheism regarding the ultimate source of reality, which is kind of different from myths, with lots of equally primordial gods fighting it out, you know?
Huh, interesting point. So Arceus emerges from the void, starts creation. But the universe needs structure, right? Form. Who were the very first beings Arceus brought into existence after itself to actually shape reality?
Right, structures was needed. So Arceus created three entities directly from its own being: Dialga, Paldea, and Giratina.
The big three from Sinnoh.
The very ones. Dialga was given control over time, basically bringing sequential existence into being. Palkia got control over space, allowing for dimension, distance, the physical layout. And Giratina, the third one, gained mastery over antimatter, the opposing force to all the matter and energy making up the universe.
Okay, time, space, antimatter. The fundamentals.
Exactly. The source explains that time literally began to flow when Dialga was born and space started expanding when Palkia emerged. They worked together, essentially, to create the material universe as we understand it.
In Giratina, you mentioned antimatter. The source says it wasn't exactly playing nice.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. Giratina's nature is described as inherently violent, disruptive, fundamentally incompatible with the ordered universe Arceus was trying to build.
So what happened?
Because of this destructive tendency, Arceus banished Giratina to the distortion world. This dimension, the source explains, exists kind of on the reverse side of the main Pokemon world.
Like a mirror dimension.
Sort of, but way more chaotic. It's a place where the usual laws of physics just don't apply. Time doesn't flow properly, space is unstable. But the banishment isn't just framed as punishment, it's also seen as establishing this fundamental cosmological triad: time, space, and antimatter distortion. The distortion world becomes this necessary counterdimension, embodying the theme of balance between these core forces, even if it's through opposition.
Okay, so the physical structure of reality, time, space, and its opposite are set up. But existence is more than just physics, right? What about the non-physical stuff like spirit, consciousness, mind?
Exactly, and that's where the second trio created by Arceus comes in. The Lake Guardians. You've got Uxie, the being of knowledge, Mesprit, the being of emotion, and Ez, the being of willpower.
The ones from Sinnoh's lakes.
Those are the ones. The original story and other legends compiled in the source describe them not creating physical things, but bringing spirit into existence. They're said to have wished spirit into being. And from that wish, consciousness, sapience, the ability to think and feel was instilled into all modern humans and Pokemon.
All of them. That's huge.
It's absolutely pivotal. Some accounts even suggest they directly created the minds of every human in the world. This act creates that shared spiritual and mental foundation between humans and Pokemon. It's the bedrock for the potential for those deep bonds and partnerships that are so central to the entire franchise.
Wow. So that connection isn't just incidental, it's fundamental to creation.
Exactly. After their creation, they settled in Sinnoh's three big lakes: Acuity, Verity, and Valor, and legends also say they have the power to calm Dialga and Palkia if they ever start fighting again.
Okay, so we have the ultimate creator, the shapers of physical reality, and the bringers of spirit and mind. What about the actual blueprint for life itself? All the different creatures, where do they come from?
Now we get to the mystery of Mew. The source places Mew's appearance way back in these very early times. Scientists within the Pokemon world, based on Pokedex entries and especially those detailed logs found in the Cinnabar Mansion labs, they theorize that Mew is the distant ancestor of most, maybe even all, other Pokemon species.
The ancestor of everything.
That's the prevailing theory, yeah. The reasoning is that Mew possesses the DNA of every single Pokemon. You know how it can learn almost any move.
Yeah, that's its whole thing.
Well, that's seen as a direct consequence of having this incredibly comprehensive genetic makeup. The Cinnabar Mansion journals specifically mention finding Mew in Guyana, South America. And sadly, they also mention its DNA being used for later experiments, which led to Mewtwo.
Right, the dark side of that discovery.
Exactly. So while Arceus initiated all existence and created those foundational legendaries, Mew's role is often seen as the original spark of biological life.
Yeah.
The progenitor from which all that amazing diversity in the Pokemon world sprang. It kind of embodies potential and adaptability.
Okay, blueprint for life, check. But the world itself still needed physical form, right?
Right.
The land, the sea, they needed sculpting.
Precisely. In this primal age, the planet's physical landscape was shaped by two absolutely titanic forces: Groudon and Kyogre.
The home legends.
Yep. The source mentions some speculation on their origins. Maybe they formed from intense magma and deep-sea pressures, or maybe they existed before land and sea and actually created them through their actions. Groudon, using immense heat and light, raised the continents from the primordial soup. Kyogre, using torrential rain, expanded and filled the seas.
Land and sea personified. But knowing those two, they didn't just peacefully coexist, did they?
Not a chance. Their very natures, embodying these opposing domains, led to an inevitable and totally cataclysmic struggle for dominance. Their conflict was capable of reshaping the entire planet's surface. It was bad news.
Who's who adopt them?
To mediate this, a third entity came into play, Rayquaza. Again, its origin is a bit debated, and the lore presented maybe formed from minerals in the ozone layer, maybe it existed before the ozone layer and actually created it.
Either way, it lives way up high.
Exactly. And its role was to descend from the sky and quell the conflict between Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre, their superpowered ancient forms. Rayquaza forced them into a deep slumber, restoring balance to the world's surface. Much, much later, humans created the red and blue orbs as artifacts specifically to prevent them reawakening, or maybe to trigger their primal reversion forms if needed.
Okay, Grogan, Kyogre, Rayquaza. Literally shaping the planet's surface.
Yeah.
But the continents weren't just created. You said they had to be arranged, moved into place.
Right, that was another monumental task, and that fell to Regigigas.
The colossal Pokémon.
The source highlights its absolutely crucial role in this era. It describes Regigigas using immense, unbelievable physical strength to literally pull and move the continents into their present locations. It's this staggering geological feat that shaped entire regions like Sinnoh, especially around the formation of Mount Coronet. It's presented as a true titan of physical world formation.
Just dragging continents around.
Right.
Okay. And while all this earth-shattering, land-moving stuff was happening, something else was brewing. Something hot.
Yeah, something incredibly hot and powerful was born from the planet's fiery core itself. That's Heatran.
The lava dome Pokémon.
Its origin, according to the legends and Pokédex entries compiled here, is tied directly to boiling magma, specifically linked to the violent volcanic activity that created Stark Mountain in Sinnoh. And Hisuian legends also connect it to the intense heat inside Mount Coronet during its formation. Heatran isn't just described as controlling magma, it's more like an embodiment, a personification of that raw volcanic energy and the Earth's inner fire during this really turbulent creation period.
Wow. That's an unbelievable cast of characters and events just for the beginning of the Pokemon world. Let's quickly recap these key players and their roles in this primordial era based on the sources table too.
Okay, quick rundown. Top is Arceus, the ultimate creator, mostly tied to Sinnoh myths. Then the first trio it created, Dialga, Time, Palkia, Space, Giratina, Antimatter, Distortion World, all strongly Sinnoh-based.
Got it. Second trio. Uxie knowledge, Mesprit emotion, Azelf willpower, the Lake Guardians, bringing spirit and mind, also Sinnoh lore. Mew is the progenitor of life, linked genetically to Kanto Cinnabar Labs but found in Guyana.
Okay.
Then Groudon, land, and Kyogre, with Rayquaza, atmosphere, as the mediator that's central to Hoen's formation and myths. Regigigas, the continent mover, shaped both Sinnoh and Hoenn, and Heatran embodies volcanic power, tied to Sinnoh's fiery geology.
So looking at this whole foundational era, what are the core insights it gives us about the Pokemon world right from the start, based on what the source pulls together?
Well, it reveals a universe with a singular origin point in Arceus, right? But one that's then shaped and maintained by numerous distinct, incredibly powerful entities. Each governs a fundamental aspect: time, space, spirit, the physical elements.
A whole cosmic hierarchy. Yeah, and there's this inherent, almost philosophical connection between these cosmic forces and the physical and spiritual makeup of the world. And crucially, the themes of balance, fundamental balance, and the potential for immense cataclysmic conflict when these powerful forces clash, those themes are woven into reality from the very beginning.
So conflict is kind of baked in.
It seems so. It firmly establishes a world where myth, cosmic power, and physical reality are deeply, intrinsically intertwined, and where the capacity for both incredible connection and devastating conflict exists on a grand scale from day one.
Okay, moving beyond the literal myths of creation, what does the source say about the deep, deep past that follows? The era of prehistoric life, dinosaurs, major geological shifts over vast stretches of time.
Right, now we get into what the compendium calls deep time. This is the geological and biological history, and the evidence is most tangible in, well, fossil Pokemon.
Our ancient friends.
Exactly. The source lays out a timeline stretching back hundreds of millions of years. It shows a parallel, in some ways, to Earth's own paleontological record. We get specific examples across huge periods, like around 300 million years ago. The source notes ancient bug-like Pokémon existed. They're considered ancestors of the species line that eventually led to Genesect.
Wow, 300 million years for Genesec's line.
Yeah, and Kabuto and Kabutops were thriving in the primordial seas around then, too. And interestingly, Carbink, the jewel Pokemon, they're said to have started their incredibly long underground slumber around this time, formed from unbelievable pressure deep down.
300 million years ago. That's truly ancient. What about the era that might look a bit more familiar, maybe, like the age of big dinosaurs and flying reptiles?
Okay, moving forward along the timeline, around 237 million years ago, we get Aerodactyl, famously resurrected from Old Amber, right? Described as being the king of the skies during its time.
I definitely see that.
Then fast forward quite a bit to approximately 100 million years ago. The source details a much more diverse ancient landscape by then. Anorith, seen as an ancestor to many later bug types hunted in the oceans. Relicanth that's specifically highlighted, it's a species that has stayed pretty much unchanged for an astonishing 100 million years. A true living fossil.
Incredible.
On land and elsewhere, you had Amara in icy plains, Tyrant as a dominant land predator, Tortuga swimming in ancient oceans, Shieldon and Cranidos lived in ancient jungles. Sleep, the sea lily Pokemon, is mentioned as going extinct around this 100 million year mark.
Wow, so extinctions happened way back then, too.
Seems so. And this is also the time when the original complete forms of the fossilized drake, dino, bird, and fish existed, the creatures whose combined fossils you later use to make Dracozolt, Arctozolt, Dracovish, and Arctovish.
Ah, the mismatched Galar fossils. So their original forms were around then.
Yep. It truly mirrors the patterns we see in Earth's fossil record, doesn't it? With different eras dominated by different types of life.
It really does.
Yeah.
Does the source suggest that evolution, like biological change over time, happened in the Pokemon world beyond just the mythological origins of Mew or Arceus?
Yes, absolutely. The compendium mentions these ancestral relationships, like Anorith leading to bug types. That strongly implies long-term evolutionary processes, driven by environmental shifts over geological time, shaped species diversity. So it's not just mythological creation, there's also this deep time biological change happening too. It establishes a framework for both within the world's history.
Okay, so life evolved over eons. Were there any other major geological or maybe even cosmic events in this ancient past before civilizations really popped up?
Oh yeah, several huge ones are noted. Around 2 million years ago, the Paldea region had intense seismic activity. This is what led to the formation of the unique area Zero Underdepths within the Great Crater.
The source of the Terastal phenomenon.
Exactly. These geological upheavals nearly wiped out Terrapagos, leaving only a few hibernating deep down in crystal form. These ancient shifts are directly linked to the energy that eventually causes terrestrialization, and the Great Crater of Paldea itself, estimated to have formed over 1 million years ago.
So Paldea's unique features are millions of years old. Wild. What else?
Further back, roughly 34 million years ago, the source points to a significant ice age period affecting the world. The glaciers eventually retreated around 12,000 BCE, which feels recent compared to 34 million years, but still deep history.
Got it. Ice ages too.
And then there's a really significant, though maybe more recent, ancient cataclysm happened approximately 20,000 years ago. This is when a massive meteorite carrying Eternatus crashed into the Galar region.
Ah, the Eternatus meteorite.
Yep. Thousands of years after that impact, Eternatus emerged, causing the catastrophic Darkest Day. That event fundamentally reshaped Galar and introduced the energy behind the Dynamax phenomenon. Interestingly, around the same time as that initial meteorite crash 20,000 years ago, the first clay doll is said to have been brought to life from a clay doll by an ancient civilization. Shows a cool connection between ancient life, cosmic events, and early human activity.
That's incredible. These ancient cataclysms aren't just backstory. They directly seeded phenomena like Dynamax and terrestrialization that are central to modern Pokemon interactions. So, after these immense stretches of prehistoric life and planet-shaping events, when do we start seeing clear signs of human civilizations emerging?
The compendium then shifts focus to what it calls the dawn of civilization. After the primordial shaping and eons of prehistoric life, early human societies started to emerge and flourish. And these civilizations weren't isolated. They developed monumental structures and cultural practices often deeply intertwined with powerful Pokemon, sometimes even mysterious ones like the unknown.
Okay, let's dive into those early societies. Where do we start?
Let's explore some specific ancient civilizations detailed in the source. First up, the enigma around the unknown and early writing. This dates back to approximately 1,500 years before the First Era.
Before the First Era, so 1,500 years before the Kanto games.
Exactly. Year zero of the modern timeline is Kanto. This is way back. The source points to archaeological findings at places like the ruins of Alpha and Johto, the Tenobi ruins in Kanto Sivi Islands, and the Salatian ruins in Sinnoh. These sites show evidence of the earliest known system of writing developing around this time.
And these sites are all linked to the unknown, right? Those alphabet Pokemon.
Absolutely. These ancient texts and structures are specifically tied to the unknown. Their 28 forms correspond to letters and punctuation. The source highlights a debate among Pokemon world archaeologists. Did the unknown script come first and influence human writing, or vice versa? The connection is undeniable, though.
A real chicken and egg situation.
Kinda. And in-game texts from these ruins, like in the Ruins of Alph, talk about own having great insight and the power to sense with mind. It hints at a time when the connection between humans, Pokemon, and maybe language itself was more profound, more mystical. Plus, those strange radio signals associated with Unknown suggest they operate on a level beyond normal understanding.
So they might be more than just living letters.
The compendium suggests that, yeah, maybe interdimensional beings, maybe manifestations of language or consciousness itself, deeply tied to how human thought developed. It's a pretty profound idea.
That language itself might be tangled up with the Pokemon species. Mind-blowing. What other significant ancient peoples does the source describe?
Well, jumping even further back to around 2,500 years BFE, the Unova region was home to a sophisticated ancient civilization. They built impressive structures like the Relic Castle.
Okay, Unova.
Legends compiled in the source say this city was built by one of the two twin heroes destined to lead the region, working alongside their powerful legendary dragon, the one that would later split into Reshiram and Zekrom.
So they build cities with legendary dragons.
Seems like it. Suggests a highly advanced society built in partnership with these immense creatures. They were integral to the civilization's founding and power. The Dragon Spiral Tower, noted as Unova's oldest structure, also dates to this era, and was where the dragons were sealed after their conflict.
Wow. In Unova, the very foundation of civilization was built hand in hand with legends. What about the Hisui era? That sounds like a melting pot of cultures.
Yeah, the Hisui era is basically ancient Sinnoh, set about 100 to 200 years before the modern Diamond, Pearl, Platinum games. The source breaks down the different groups there. First, the Celestica people. They were ancient, migrating to Hisui from a place called Sinjo, maybe a millennium or two before the legends. Arceus game events.
So they were there for a long time.
A very long time. They deeply worshipped Arceus, calling it Almighty Sinnoh, and also revered the Creation Trio. They built the Temple of Sinnoh on Mount Coronet for Arceus. Their history tells of an ancient hero who gathered Arceus's plates. Eventually, they vanished, leaving ruins and descendants like Kogita.
And this ancient hero figure, what was their deal?
The legend says this hero traveled Hisui with 10 chosen Pokemon companions, seeking all 18 of Arceus's plates. After succeeding and meeting Arceus, the hero and their companions were blessed. And critically, these 10 companion Pokemon, they're said to be the ancestors of the Noble and Ride Pokemon that the later clans revere.
Connecting the legends directly to the game mechanics.
Exactly. The source is the player character in Legends. Arceus basically mirrors and fulfills this ancient template.
Cool. Who else was in Hisui?
Later, other groups arrived from across the sea, the Diamond Clan and the Pearl Clan. They also worshipped Almighty Sinnoh, but they had fundamentally different ideas about its nature. Diamond Clan believed it created time, so they revered Dialga. Pearl Clan believed it created space, revering Palkia.
Reflecting the original creation trio roles.
Precisely. And this core disagreement led to a long-standing feud between them. They became the wardens, the protectors, of those Noble and Ride Pokemon descended from the ancient heroes' partners.
Okay, so two clans with different beliefs. Then who else arrived?
Then, about 2 years before the Legends, Arceus game events, the Galaxy Expedition team showed up. These were settlers from various other, more modern regions. The source mentions people from Hone, Alola, Galar, places like that, led by Commander Kamado. Their mission: survey the frontier region of Hisui, establishing Jubilee Village as their base.
And they brought new tech.
Yep. They brought what the source calls a relatively newly invented technology for the time. Pokeballs crafted from apricorns and tumblestones, the ones that puff steam when you catch something.
Right, the Hisuian balls.
And the compendium highlights a key tension here. Initially, many Galaxy team members were cautious, even fearful of Pokémon, saw them as dangerous wild creatures, which was a big contrast to the native clan's deep reverence and coexistence.
So you had ancient native cultures with spiritual ties and newcomers with technology and caution. Sounds like a recipe for interesting times.
Definitely. This convergence sets the stage for the space-time rift crisis, the main conflict in Legends. Arceus, a massive, unstable rift opens above Mount Coronet, apparently instigated by Volo, a Celestica descendant working with Giratina,
Uh-oh. Giratina again.
always causing trouble. This rift makes the noble Pokémon go berserk and create smaller distortions that pull things and people, like the player character from other times and dimensions, into Hisui.
So that's how the player gets there.
Seems so. The player's journey, guided by Professor Laventon and working with both clans, involves calming the nobles, investigating the rift, forging the red chain using the Lake Guardian's power, encountering Dialga and Palkia in their ancient origin forms, and finally confronting Volo and Giratina.
A huge undertaking.
And resolving it requires cooperation between the clans and the Galaxy team. It forces them towards greater understanding, bridging the gap between their worldviews, and starting to reshape how humans and Pokémon relate in Hisui.
The Hisui era sounds like a truly fascinating period, a microcosm of cultural interaction, conflict, synthesis.
It really emphasizes that interplay. Ancient beliefs versus newer philosophies, reverence versus scientific study, and how interaction, conflict, and ultimately cooperation can reshape those crucial human-Pokémon relationships. The player, as an outsider from another time, acts as a catalyst, helping forge a new path for Hisui, which eventually becomes the modern Sinnoh region we know.
Makes sense. Does the source mention any other key ancient groups briefly?
Yeah, Table 3 in the compendium gives brief mentions to others, showing these deep histories exist across many regions. It notes the ancient Draconid people in Hone, those dragon trainers who worshipped Rayquaza and built Sky Pillar, the ancient Colosians from AZ's time, tied to the Kalos War and the ultimate weapon's origin, the ancient Galarians who faced the darkest day with Zacian and Zamazenta, and the early Paldean Empire, which ruled Paldea and started exploring the Great Crater. These aren't fully detailed here, but they link these ancient societies to later pivotal events.
It's becoming incredibly clear that the past, no matter how ancient, is never really gone in the Pokemon world, is it?
Not at all. This ancient history section shows a world with layers upon layers. You've got verifiable fossil records showing deep biological time, powerful myths explaining consciousness and language, and complex human societies deeply intertwined with powerful Pokemon. Mysteries like the unknown, legacies like the Draconids. Legend and history are two sides of the same coin, constantly shaping the present.
Okay, so ancient civilizations rose and fell. The land was shaped by titans and cataclysms. What are the crucial events that bridge that distant past with the modern era of trainers that we're most familiar with? What happens in between?
Right. This brings us into what the compendium calls the Age of Conflict and Legendary Events. This is a pre-modern period, sitting between the height of those ancient civilizations and the start of the modern trainer era. It's characterized by major regional conflicts, pivotal moments with legendary Pokemon that created lasting legends, and events that really set the stage for the world's structure and phenomena.
Sounds important. What's a key event from this time?
One of the absolute most critical with far-reaching consequences is the Kalos War and the genesis of Mega Evolution. The source places this around 3,000 years before the first era, so 3,000 years before Kanto.
The Kalos War. Okay, I remember hearing about this.
It was apparently a devastating, prolonged war across the Kalos region, and at its heart was the king, AZ, and his deep love for his Floette. The compendium recounts the tragic story. Floette was killed in the war. AZ, consumed by grief, refused to accept it and built this colossal machine just to bring Floette back to life.
A resurrection machine.
Yeah.
But there was a cost, wasn't there?
A terrible one. The source is explicit. To power this machine, AZ harvested the life force of countless other Pokemon. Those graves you see lining Route 10 in modern Kalos, that's apparently them. A grim reminder.
Oh, wow. That's dark. Did it work?
It did. It resurrected Floette. And as a side effect, it granted both AZ and Floette eternal life.
Eternal life.
Okay.
But he didn't stop there.
No. His grief twisted into this immense rage against the world that caused his pain. He converted the same machine into the ultimate weapon. And in a fit of vengeful fury, he unleashed its devastating power on both sides of the conflict, ending the war through sheer, indiscriminate destruction.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The compendium notes Floette was horrified by the sacrifice and the weapon's use, and immediately left AZ. couldn't stay with him after that. The weapon was later buried by AZ's younger brother and the unique energy it used. That was eventually studied by Devancore and Hone, who called it infinity energy.
A personal tragedy escalating into a world-altering catastrophe. But what was a long-term impact, beyond just ending the war?
This is where it connects directly to a key mechanic we know today. The source explains that firing the ultimate weapon, charged with all that life energy, had a profound, lasting effect on the planet. It irradiated the evolution stones scattered across Kalos, fundamentally altering them, transforming them into megastones.
No way. That's the
Rabam.
origin of megastones.
That's what the source presents. This event is the direct origin of the mega-evolution phenomenon. Professor Sycamore's research in modern Kalos is noted as confirming this ancient link.
Okay, that's huge.
But wait, it gets even more significant. Remember the multiverse. The compendium cites Zinnia's dialogue in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. She explicitly talks about a world existing where the ultimate weapon was never built, and so mega-evolution is unknown there.
She really says that.
Yep. And this dialogue is presented as canon confirmation that the Kalos War, specifically firing the weapon, was a reality-altering event that split the timeline.
Whoa.
So you have the original timeline, no weapon, no megas, and the mega evolution timeline. Weapon fired, megas exists includes XY, ORRES, Sun Moon, Ultra Sun Moon. AZ's grief and rage literally became a trans-universal nexus point.
That is absolutely staggering. One king's actions branching the entire Pokemon universe.
Okay. What other significant regional histories stand out in this pre-modern era? Hone has its own deep history tied to cosmic events and legendaries, especially around the ancient Draconid people, remember them. Ancient dragon trainers worshipped Rayquaza as their dragon lord.
Right, built the Sky Pillar.
Exactly. The compendium details the first meteorite crisis, around 2,000 years BFE. After the primordial shaping by Groudon Kyogre, natural energy imbalances led to renewed clashes and disasters. A big meteor shower hit Hone, one large one impacting near-future Sootopolis City, creating its caldera about 1,000 years BFE. This celestial bombardment reawakened primal Groudon and Kyogre, restarting their devastating fight.
Okay, so ancient meteors woke them up. How did the Draconids handle that?
They turned to Rayquaza. The Draconid people, led by their lore keeper, prayed intensely. The lore keeper used a special rainbow stone, basically an early keystone, and channeled the collective wishes and faith of their people through it towards Rayquaza.
Okay.
And the compendium emphasizes this. This profound bond and channeled intent allowed Rayquaza to do something incredible. It mega-evolved for the very first time in recorded history.
The first mega evolution was Rayquaza, triggered by the Draconids.
That's the story presented. Mega Rayquaza then descended and quelled the primal titans, saving the world. They built the Sky Pillar afterwards as a monument and a way to summon their Dragon Lord. It's a powerful example of that human-Pokemon symbiosis, faith, intention, and maybe an artifact unlocking ultimate power.
Incredible. Anything else about the Draconids?
They were also noted for prophetic abilities. The source mentions they foresaw a second, even larger meteoroid crisis threatening the world far in the future. And that prophecy becomes central to the Delta episode in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, tying their ancient history directly to modern events in that timeline.
Ho's past is just layer upon layer of cosmic events and ancient bonds. Let's jump over to Johto. He's got those famous towers, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Johto is steeped in history and tradition, especially around Ekrutik City. The source details the construction of two magnificent towers there around 700 years BFE. The Bell Tower, east, for Pokemon Rest, and the Brass Tower, west, for Pokemon Awakening. They were symbols of human-Pokemon friendship. Lugia was associated with the Brass Tower, Ho-Oh with the Bell Tower.
Okay, peaceful symbols. But one of them burned down. Yeah, the Brass Tower. Around 150 years BFE, a catastrophic event happened. Lightning struck the tower during a storm and it burned to the ground. Tragically, 3 unnamed Pokemon perished inside.
Oh no.
But then, the source highlights a pivotal action by Ho-Oh. It descended from the sky and used its incredible power to resurrect those 3 Pokemon. But they weren't just brought back, they were transformed, reincarnated into the legendary beasts. Raikou, embodying the lightning, Antair embodying the fire, and Suicune, embodying the rain that finally put out the flames.
Wow. Ho-Oh's resurrection power creating the legendary beasts, that's the core of their legend. What happened after that? Well, Lugia apparently left Ekrutik after this, retreating to the Whirl Islands, and the people of Ekrutik, who were initially awestruck, became fearful. Fearful of the immense, unpredictable power they'd witnessed in Ho and the beasts. This fear caused Ho-Oh and the beasts to retreat from humans, too. The ruins of the Brass Tower became the Burn Tower, a reminder of the tragedy and the legendary event. It shows how interactions with legendaries can be complex, inspiring wonder, but also fear.
Makes sense. Powerful forces can be scary. Okay, ancient structures, world-altering wars, legendary resurrections. But what about maybe the most iconic piece of Pokemon tech, the Pokeball? How did that come about?
Yeah.
Seems like you should have a clear origin story.
You'd think so, right? But the source actually presents the invention of Pokeballs as having a complex, maybe even slightly contradictory history depending on where you look. It suggests it wasn't one single invention, but more like a gradual evolution with regional variations over a long time.
Okay, so what are the different accounts?
Well, there are the ancient apricorn balls from Johto, cited as potentially the earliest method. An ancient technique passed down through families like Kurtz in Azalea Town, possibly dating back 400 to 700 years BFE, just crafted directly from apricorns.
Super old school.
Then you have the Hisuian Pokeballs from ancient Sinnoh, around 100, 200 years before the modern era. Professor Levinton in Legends. Arceus calls them a more recent invention, crafted from tumblestones and apricorns used by the arriving Galaxy team. They look kind of 19th century, puffing steam on capture, a step up from just raw apricorns, but still primitive.
Right, the steampunky ones.
Then the source mentions a detail from Unova gym leader Drayden supposedly said Pokeballs didn't exist when he was young. The compendium adds a little asterisk, saying the exact quote's prevalence isn't certain, but if true, it could imply standardized balls arrived much later in some regions, regional lag in tech adoption maybe.
Interesting. Different speeds of development.
And finally, you get the modern mass-produced balls. The source attributes their development and widespread availability to industrial-scale production by companies like Silphco and Kanto and Devoncore and Hone. This is the big leap mass production of consistent metallic capture devices. While Professor Westwood in Kanto gets mentioned sometimes, the source leans towards it being industrial advancement building on earlier ideas, rather than one single inventor for the modern ball. It cautions against relying on, say, anime depictions showing modern balls hundreds of years ago, focusing on the game's implication of more recent industrialization.
So the history of the Pokeball isn't one neat story, but a technological evolution over centuries, happening differently in different places.
That seems to be the model the source presents. Pokeball is like a general term. Basic apricorn methods are ancient. Standardized Hisui balls came later. Modern metallic balls are the result of industrial progress. This way, the different accounts can kind of coexist as stages in development.
Okay, that makes sense. This pre-modern era is packed. World-altering weapons from grief, legendary resurrections from tragedy, the surprisingly complex origins of Pokeballs. What are the big takeaways for you from this period?
For me, it's seeing how monumental events, like the Kalos War, can have truly world-altering, even universe-splitting consequences. It highlights the deep, dramatic histories of regions like Hon and Johto with their legendaries, where the landscape, sacred sites, legends are direct results of ancient cataclysms and divine acts. And it tracks that fascinating evolution of technology alongside society, showing how even something as basic as the Pokeball evolved over centuries. This whole period really sets the stage, providing the crucial historical context for the heroes, villains, and phenomena of the modern world you experience in the games.
And that brings us right up to the modern era. This is the time frame most players probably know best, the age of Pokemon leagues, gym challenges, organized evil teams, and young trainers setting out on adventures.
That's right. The compendium defines the modern era by the rise of organized training, regional leagues, and trainer journeys, often intercepting with major regional crises. It places the events of Gen 1st, Kanto, and Gen 3rd, Hone, as concurrent points, labeling them Year Zero of the modern era. Subsequent generations generally follow chronologically from there.
Okay, Year Zero, Kanto and Hone happening at the same time. Let's start with Kanto, red and blue, right?
Or Red and Leaf, yeah. The journey starts in Pallet Town with Professor Oak getting your first Pokemon, the Pokedex, setting out to collect 8 gym badges, including challenging the Viridian City gym leader, who turns out to be the boss of Team Rocket, Giovanni.
And you keep running into Team Rocket all over Kanto, don't you?
Constantly. The source details their schemes, trying to steal fossils from Mount Moon, running the Game Corner hideout in Celadon, and the big one taking over Silphco in Saffron City to get the prototype Master Ball.
The ball that never misses.
Exactly. Red's final defeat of Giovanni in the Viridian Gem is what supposedly leads Giovanni to disband Team Rocket, at least for a while.
But Kanto also has that whole Mewtwo subplot, right?
Hmm.
Hidden in the background.
Oh yeah, a significant and darker one. Detailed through clues like the journals in the ruined Cinnabar Mansion. They document discovering Mew in Guyana, then the genetic engineering experiments using Mew's DNA explicitly funded by Team Rocket to create the most powerful Pokémon.
And that created Mewtwo.
It did. Mewtwo gained self-awareness, was enraged by its artificial existence and how it was treated, destroyed the lab, and escaped to hide out in Cerulean Cave. This subplot really highlights that recurring theme. Science's dual nature, understanding versus exploitation, ambition versus ethics.
Powerful stuff. So after beating Team Rocket and the gems,
Red or Leaf challenges the Kanto Elite Four, Lorelei, Bruno, Agatha, Lance, and finally the champion, who is Blue, your rival, becoming the Kanto champion. The Fire Red and Leaf Green remakes add the Civi Islands postgame, with Celio's network and leftover Team Rocket members searching for the Ruby and Sapphire gems. And of course, the legendary birds Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres are around. The compendium notes Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee are considered an alternate timeline branch due to differences, though still retelling the core story within a mega evolution context.
so Kanto sets the blueprint. Trainer journey, criminal team, dark science. What was happening concurrently down in Hone, years later there?
Hone, also year zero, you follow Brendan or May, moving to Little Root Town, getting a starter from Professor Birch. Journey involves 8 Hone gyms, including facing your own dad, Norman, in Petalburg. Rivals are Birch's Kid and Wally.
And the villains are Team Aqua and Team Agma, right? With opposite goals.
Exactly. Team Magma wants to expand the landmass for human progress, seeking to awaken Groudon. Team Aqua believes life came from the sea and wants to return the world to that state by expanding oceans, seeking Kyogre. The compendium details their ideologies, Magma's human-centric progress versus Aqua's focus on Pokémon life and environment. Despite opposing goals, they both succeed in awakening their respective legendaries using the red and blue orbs, but they fail to control them.
Leading to disaster.
Massive environmental disasters, unprecedented drought from Groudon, torrential rain from Kyogre, chaos. In Pokemon Emerald, the player has to intervene as both clash. You ascend Sky Pillar, awaken Rayquaza, who then descends to Sootopolis City and stops the fight.
Rayquaza saving the day again.
Classic Rayquaza. The protagonist then beats the Hone Elite Four, Sydney, Phoebe, Glacia, Drake, and the champion, Steven Stone or Wallace. Hone's lore also includes the sealed Regis Regirock, Registeel needing Braille decoded, Fossil Revival via Devon Cortec. Emerald adds the Battle Frontier. Team Aquamagma stand out for villainy driven by radical environmental alteration based on ideology, different from Team Rocket's crime focus.
Okay, but then there's Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the remakes. How they fit in.
Right. ORIS is crucial, set in the Mega Evolution timeline branch. Core plot is similar, but key differences layer the history. Team Magma Aqua successfully trigger Primal Reversion in Groudon Kyogre, showing their full ancient power. And critically, the post-game Delta episode explicitly ties modern events to Hone's deep past.
With Zinnia and the Draconids.
Exactly. It introduces Zinnia, a Draconid lore keeper, delves into their history and prophecy of that second, bigger meteoroid threatening the world. You, the player, guided by Zinnia and Draconid lore, summon Mega Rayquaza, tying back to that first Mega Evolution event to destroy the meteoroid, and then battle Deoxys, which emerges from it. ORIS massively expanded Hone's lore, layering the primordial history, Draconid culture, Regis mystery, and modern crisis together, showing how the past constantly shapes the present.
So year zero gives us Kanto, crime science ethics, and Hone, environment Kenshin power history. What happens a few years after that?
The compendium indicates a time jump of about 3 years after Kanto Hone. This brings us to the next major regional stories, generally concurrent in the original timeline branch, Johto and Sinnoh.
Johto next. Gold and Silver time.
Yep. Ethan, Lyra, or Chris, starting in New Barktown with Professor Elm, focusing on eggs and breeding. Main rival is Silver, the harsh kid who steals a starter.
And Team Rocket is back. Didn't Giovanni disband them?
He did, but remnants tried to revive operations in Johto. Their schemes include the slowpoke tail cutting and the big plot to take over the Goldenrod radio tower to broadcast a signal to find Giovanni. You, with Champion Lance's help, stop them, and the Red Gyarados at Lake of Rage. That's a direct result of their unethical evolution-forcing experiments.
Jerks. But Johto is also really steeped in history, right?
Absolutely. Ecruteak City and its towers are central, linking directly to the Burn Tower fire 150 years prior and Ho-Oh resurrecting the beasts. Getting the Rainbow or Silverwing is tied to these legends. You've got Kurt and Azalea Town making apricorn balls, connecting to that ancient tech. The ruins of Elf and the Unknown linked to ancient writing and deeper mysteries. Ilex Forest and Celebi connect to time travel.
History everywhere. What about the remakes Heart Gold and Soul Silver?
HGSS, still in the original timeline, add more historical depth. The Sinjo Ruins event shows an ancient cultural merge between Johto and Sinnoh peoples, letting you get a creation trio member from Arceus, highlighting ancient migration. And post-game, you travel to Kanto, challenge its gym leaders, who've changed in 3 years, and face Red, the Kanto protagonist from 3 years prior on Mount Silver. A great continuity nod.
Johto feels like the past is always present. What about Sinnoh, happening around the same time, with its cosmic connections?
Sinnoh, yeah, generally concurrent with Johto in the original timeline. Lucas or Dawn starting in Twin Leaf Town with Professor Rowan studying evolution, rival Barry keeping things lively.
And the villains are Team Galactic, right? With Cyrus.
Yes, Team Galactic, led by the chillingly philosophical Cyrus. The source details his radical nihilism. He believes spirit and emotion are the source of all suffering, and his goal is to destroy the current universe and remake it without them, with himself as its god.
Whoa, that's ambitious. How does he plan to do that?
By capturing the Lake Guardians, Uxie, Mesprit, Azelf, extracting their power over spirit to forge the Red Chain, an artifact that can supposedly control the creation trio.
Dialga and Palkia.
Exactly. The climax is that spear pillar atop Mount Coronet. Cyrus uses the Red Chain to summon Dialga in Diamond BD or Palkia in Pearl SP. You, helped by the Lake Guardians and maybe champion Cynthia, have to stop him.
And Platinum version changes things up.
Yeah, Platinum is seen as a more complete account. Cyrus summons both Dialga and Palkia. This disturbance attracts Giratina, ruler of the Distortion World, who drags Cyrus in there. You and Cynthia follow into this bizarre alternate dimension to confront Cyrus and Giratina in its serpentine origin form. International Police Agent Looker also plays a bigger role investigating Galactic.
So you actually go into the Distortion World. Cool.
Yeah, and places like Celestic Town, with ancient murals of creation myths, underscore Sinnoh's deep cosmic history. The narrative really raises the stakes, a villain aiming for universal recreation based on extreme philosophy. It heavily emphasizes how interconnected Sinnoh's legendaries are, Arceus, Creation, Trio, Lake Guardians, and how messing with one part affects everything, even other dimensions.
Sinnoh definitely went cosmic.
Right.
Okay, after Johto and Sinnoh, where does the timeline take us?
The source indicates another time jump, placing the Unova region events, Black-White B2W2, several years after Johto Sinnoh. We see characters like Cynthia reappearing, looking older. The focus shifts to the distant, culturally distinct Unova.
Black and White, Hilbert and Hilda.
Yep, starting in Nuvema Town with Professor Juniper, joined by friends rivals Charon and Bianca.
And the villains are Team Plasma, right? The ones wanting to liberate Pokémon.
That's their public message. Led by the charismatic N, who can talk to Pokémon and believes separation is best. But the compendium reveals the real mastermind. Getsy's Harmonia, one of the 7 sages. He's manipulating N and everyone else. His goal isn't liberation, it's to be the only person with Pokémon seizing absolute power.
Classic hidden villain. What about Unova's own history?
Unova has its own deep lore. The twin heroes and the single original dragon founding the region. But the heroes' conflicting beliefs, truth versus ideals, cause the dragon to split into Reshiram truth, Zekrom ideals, and Kyurem, the empty remnant.
The Dragon Trio.
Exactly. N seeks to awaken one dragon, Zekrom in black, Reshiram in white, at Dragon Spiral Tower. You awaken the other with the imposing Dragonstone. The climax is at the Pokemon League. N defeats Champion Alder, summons his castle. You confront and beat N. Then Getsy's reveals his scheme, battles you, is defeated but escapes. N leaves with his dragon, disillusioned. Ancient sites like Relic Castle, 2,500 years old, connect back to this founding lore.
Black and White really dug into the ethics of training, using N's genuine concern against Getsy's cynicism. What happens in the sequels, Black 2 and White 2?
B2W2 are set 2 years later. New protagonists, Netarosa, new rival Hugh with a personal quest against Plasma. Unova has changed, Iris is now champion.
And Team Plasma still around.
Cockshirt. One faction follows N's ideals, the other is Neo Team Plasma, led by Getsy's again, with Colress as the public face scientist, interested only in maximizing Pokemon's strength.
What's their plan this time?
More brutal. Capture Kyurem, use the DNA splicers, an ancient artifact, to fuse it with Reshiram or Zekrom, freeze Unova with a weapon on their airship, the Plasma Frigate, seize control. They succeed in freezing Uplucid City.
Oh, wow.
N returns with his dragon to stop Getsy's. But Getsy's uses the splicers to revert N's dragon to stone, then forcibly fuses Kyurem with it. black Kyurem or white Kyurem. You have to defeat the fused Kyurem it separates. Getsis is beaten again, finally taken away. B2W2 shows the aftermath, Getsis' lingering impact, and introduces Kyurem's fusion potential, hinting at the original dragon's power. Plus, the Pokemon World Tournament lets you battle past leaders' champions.
The Unova era sounds really complex, dealing with ideology, consequences, and ancient power. Okay, next up, Kalos, where the timeline apparently split.
Pokemon X and Y, yes. Explicitly set in the Mega Evolution timeline branch created by the Kalos War 3,000 years prior. Protagonist Kalem or Serena, starting in Vanderbilt Town, group of friends, rivals, Shauna, Tierno, Trevor. Professor Sycamore, researching Mega Evolution, gives you a Kalos starter and a Kanto starter capable of Mega Evolving.
Getting niggas early. Who's the villain?
Team Flare, led by Lysandra. Inventor, head of Lysandra Labs, Holocaster. Public goal, beautiful world, real aim, use AZ's 3,000-year-old ultimate weapon, under Geosinge Town, powered by Xernea's Life X or Yveltal Destruction Y, to wipe out most life. He believes it's necessary to preserve resources from greedy humans.
So his motive is twisted preservation.
Exactly. Twisted, despairing preservation. The source reiterates AZ's tragic backstory, Floette, the machine becoming the weapon, eternal life being abandoned, showing how that ancient history directly motivates Lysandra. You confront Lysandra, battle, capture the legendary, disable the weapon. Lysandra seemingly perishes when the weapon self-destructs. Zygarde is around monitoring, but its full story comes later.
And AZ himself appears.
Yep. Post-game, you battle AZ. After his defeat, he finds some peace, and his ancient Floette finally returns to him after 3,000 years. Kalos really ties that ancient past directly to the modern crisis, with a villain rooted in despair.
A powerful connection. Okay, after Kalos, Alola. Island challenges, Z moves, Ultra Beasts. Where does that fit?
Alola, Sun Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, is placed several years after Kalothur's. We know because Red and Blue look older when they appear post-game. Alola introduces the Island Challenge instead of gyms, Z-moves, and the whole concept of Ultra Beasts from other dimensions.
Sun, Moon first, Elio and Celine.
Right. Moving from Kanto, Rival Hao, Professor Kukui, taking the Island Challenge, Trial Captains Kukurnes, getting the Z-Ring. Key companion is Lily, Kukui's assistant, caring for Nebby, a Cosmog, who she rescued from the Ether Foundation. Nebby creates Ultra Wormholes. Teen Skull, Guzma, Plumeria are local troublemakers, but ultimately manipulated.
By the Ether Foundation, they seem good at first.
Exactly. The main villain is Aether, led by President Lucamine, Luli Gladion's mother. Publicly. Conservation. Secretly. Lucamine is obsessed with Ultra Beasts, especially Nihilego, due to trauma from her husband Moan disappearing via Ultra Wormhole years ago, uses Nebby to force open wormholes, unleashing Ultra Beasts, and eventually merges with Nihilego herself.
Whoa, she merges with one.
Yeah. You, with Lily, Hao, and Gladion, Lily's brother, who stole type Nell from Ether, travel to Ultra Space on Nebby, now Solgaleo Lunala, to confront her, defeat her, separate her from Nihilego. Lily takes her to Kanto for treatment. Alola's guardian Tapas play a role. You help establish the Alola League, become its first champion.
Alola sounds like it really focuses on family trauma and these new dimensional threats. What about the Ultra versions? How are they different?
Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, USUM, are explicitly alternate stories in a parallel universe within the Mega Evolution timeline. Core challenge is similar, but the narrative diverges significantly later on. They introduce the Ultra Recon Squad from Ultra Megalopolis, a world that lost its light. The main antagonist shifts to Necrozma, the Prism Pokemon. An ancient Ultra Beast that gave light but was injured, now a pillager of light. Lucamine's goal changes slightly. Stop Necrozma stealing Alola's light, still using reckless methods. Necrozma appears, battles Solgaleo Lunala, forcibly fuses with them, Duskmane Dawn wings Necrozma, plunging Alola into darkness.
Okay, that's different.
Yeah. You, aided by the URS, ride the other legendary through Ultra Space to Ultra Megalopolis. Battle Necrozma, it absorbs light, your Z-Ring environment, to become Ultra Necrozma, its true form. Defeating it restores light. USUM has an expanded Pokedex, new UBs, Poipoline, Stakataka, Blacephalon. Ultra Wormhole travel lets you find past legendaries.
So Necrozma takes center stage. But wasn't there something else major in USEM about the multiverse?
Absolutely. The post-game episode RR, Rainbow Rocket. This is Hughie confirmation. Giovanni, from an alternate universe where he won, has crossed dimensions and gathered other villain leaders. Archie, Maxie, Cyrus, Lysandra, Getzies, from their alternate universes where they also won.
A team-up of victorious villains from parallel worlds.
Exactly. They take over Aether Paradise Festival Plaza. You, with Lily, Colress, Gizma, have to defeat this multi-universal supervillain team. After defeat, Giovanni vanishes, explicitly saying he's off to plot anew in another world. It definitively cements the canonical reality of alternate dimensions and timelines.
Wow. The Ultra Games didn't just introduce new stuff. They explicitly confirmed and showcased the whole Pokémon multiverse in a massive way.
Absolutely. Showed different games can be windows into parallel realities with different outcomes. And Necrozma's story adds tragedy, framing it as damaged by past events.
Okay, our source mentions the most recent regions, Galar and Paldea, but didn't give full plot summaries. What do we know about their place and key lore points from earlier?
Right. The source places Galar, Sword Shield, and Paldea, Scarlet Violet, chronologically after Alola as the most recent core games, generally considered within the Mega Evolution timeline branch due to some references. While main plots weren't detailed, key history was integrated earlier.
Like for Galar.
We reiterated the Eternatus meteorite crash 20,000 years ago, the later Darkest Day, 3,000 years BFE, heroes Zacian Zamazenta stopping it, direct link between Eternatus energy and Dynamax Gigantamax in power spots, modern villain chairman Rosmacro Cosmos tied to Eternatus' reemergence.
And Paldea.
We noted the Great Crater Area Zero formation, 1 to 2 MYA, the link to the Terastal phenomenon and Tropicos' near extinction, the early Paldean Empire, 2,000 years BFE, starting exploration, and noted the player attends an academy, main story is the treasure hunt.
So even the newest adventures build on these incredibly ancient foundations we talked about earlier. We've really spanned vast amounts of time and even dimensions today. We've journeyed from the cosmic void and the birth of deities shaping existence through ancient civilizations tied to legends, witnessed conflicts that branched reality, and explored the modern era where trainers face challenges rooted in history, science, and philosophy. Looking back at this whole sweep of Pokémon lore chronologically based on this source, what are the major themes, the big takeaways that emerge?
The compendium synthesizes several key trends that keep popping up. First, those mythological foundations. The earliest history is steeped in creation myths, archetypal figures, creators, titans, heroes, giving it this rich symbolic origin.
Definitely felt that with Arceus and the trios.
Second, the significance of legendaries and mythicals. They're not just rare encounters, they're integral to creation, history, balance. Their actions often drive the major conflicts.
They're major players, not just collectibles.
Exactly. Third, the evolving theme of human-Pokemon relationships. We see it go from ancient symbiosis and reverence to exploitation and conflict with villain teams, ultimately reinforcing that ideal of mutual respect and partnership. It's a core tension.
The heart of the franchise, really.
Fourth, conflict and resolution are central. History and modern plots are driven by conflict wars, legendary clashes, villains leading to new states of balance or understanding, usually thanks to you, the player.
Always saving the world.
Pretty much. Fifth, technological and societal evolution. Clear progression from ancient methods like apricorns to modern tech like mass-produced balls and research labs, and societal shifts from tribes monarchies to league international groups.
The world changes over time.
And sixth, critically, the multiverse as canonical reality. The source emphasizes this. The Kalos War split, or RAS, episode RR, it's presented as a defining feature. It allows narrative flexibility, reinterpretations, coexistence of storylines. Pokemon lore isn't static history. It's a dynamic, branching web.
That's a huge one. Changes everything.
And finally, an increasing philosophical depth. Later villains and plots tackle more complex ideas, ethics of training, beauty versus destruction, ambition, grief, the nature of existence itself. It gets deeper.
It's fascinating how these themes echo and evolve across millions of years in different dimensions.
The source presents it as this continuously unfolding saga, Each entry builds on the past, adds new layers, stays internally consistent within its rules of canon and multiverse theory. It's a living fictional universe.
So for you, our listener, someone interested in Pokemon today, why does understanding this incredibly deep history actually matter? What does it add?
Oh, it adds so much depth. Understanding the origins of Mega Evolution, Dynamax, Terastalization, knowing why they exist gives them so much more weight. Seeing the roots of human-Pokemon relationships, the good, the bad, the partnership ideal, makes your own bonds feel more meaningful. Recognizing recurring themes of balance and conflict helps you understand the stakes in the games. And knowing how past events, ancient wars, tower fires, meteor crashes directly shape the regions, cultures, and challenges you face, it makes the world feel incredibly rich, lived in, real. It transforms playing the game into exploring a universe with this deep, dramatic, ongoing history.
This journey through time and dimensions has been absolutely incredible. It really does make you see every game, every region, every legendary encounter, even the Pokemon in your party, in a completely new light. We've covered the cosmic creation from the primal egg, the birth of Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina shaping reality, Mew and the Lake Guardians bringing life and spirit. We explored deep prehistory, ancient civilizations like the Univans and Celestica, the mysteries of the unknown. We witnessed pivotal conflicts, the Kalos War splitting time and birthing mega evolution, Honin's meteor crises, and the first Mega Rayquaza, the Burn Tower, and the legendary beasts. We tracked the evolution of the Pokeball, and we journeyed through the modern era. Team Rocket's crime, Aqua Magma's extremism, Galactic's nihilism, Plasma's manipulation, Flare's twisted beauty, Aether's obsession, culminating in that multiverse villain team-up.
We saw how figures like Arceus, Mew, Dialga, Palkia, Groudon, Kyogre, Rayquaza, and Regigigas laid the very foundations. How ancient peoples intertwined their lives with powerful Pokemon. How single events created new phenomena and legends. And how modern villains like Cyrus, Ghetsis, Lysandra, and Lusamine brought regions to the brink using or misusing these ancient powers.
And thanks to this compendium and events like Episode RR, we now understand those different games you've played aren't just retellings. They're often canonical windows into parallel timelines within a single, vast Pokemon multiverse. So here's a final thought for you to ponder. Building on all this incredible history, considering how often the echoes of these ancient powers, mythological beings, and past conflicts, whether it's AZ's weapon, Eternatus's energy, or the original dragon's power resurfaced to dramatically impact the modern world in Pokemon. What does this deeply layered and cyclical history suggest about the relationship between history, myth, and the present day in this incredibly rich and ever-expanding universe?